The first thing Ben felt was cold. Not the gentle cool of morning air, but the deep, bone-reaching cold that came from machines keeping a body alive for far too long. His eyes opened slowly, fighting against the weight of centuries. The medical pod around him hummed quietly, its blue lights blinking in patterns he had forgotten how to read. Ben tried to move his fingers. They responded, but slowly, like old machinery coming back to life. The pod's lid opened with a soft hiss, releasing him into the recycled air of the ship. He sat up carefully, his muscles weak from the long sleep. The walls around him were familiar yet strange. This was the research vessel Horizon, his home for what was supposed to be a 5-year mission. But something felt different. He climbed out of the pod on shaking legs. The ship was quiet. Too quiet. Ben had expected to hear voices, the sound of his crew moving through the corridors, the gentle buzz of conversation that made a ship feel alive. Instead, there was only the steady hum of life support systems and the distant whisper of air recyclers. "Hello?" Ben called out, his voice rough from disuse. No answer came back. He walked slowly through the corridors, holding onto the walls for support. His legs grew stronger with each step, muscle memory returning as his body remembered how to move. The ship looked exactly as he remembered it, but dust covered everything. Not the light dust of a few days, but the heavy coating that came from years of neglect. Ben found the main computer terminal and activated it with shaking hands. The screen flickered to life, showing him information that made his heart stop. According to the ship's log, he had been asleep for 300 years. The crew was listed as deceased, their bodies long since returned to the recycling systems that kept the ship running. He was alone. Completely, utterly alone. Ben sat heavily in the captain's chair, trying to process this information. 300 years. Everyone he had ever known was dead. Earth itself might be dead. He was a man out of time, floating through space in a ship that had become his tomb. But the ship was still moving. Ben checked the navigation systems and found they were approaching something massive. The sensors showed an object ahead that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. It was not a planet or a moon, but something artificial, something impossible. Ben moved to the main viewing screen and activated it. What he saw took his breath away. A structure stretched across space larger than most asteroids. It looked like a city made of crystal and light, with towers that spiraled into impossible shapes. Ships moved around it like tiny insects, but even they were enormous by human standards. The whole structure glowed with a soft, warm light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "What is this place?" Ben whispered to himself. The ship's computer began to beep with incoming signals. Ben activated the communication systems, expecting to hear radio waves or data streams. Instead, a voice spoke directly into his mind. "Welcome, dreamer," the voice said. It was neither male nor female, but something between the two. "We have been waiting for you to wake." Ben looked around the bridge, confused. "Who's speaking? Where are you?" "We are here," the voice replied. "Look behind you." Ben turned and nearly fell from his chair. 3 beings stood on his bridge, though he had not heard them enter. They were tall, perhaps 8 feet in height, with bodies that seemed to be made of living crystal. Their skin was translucent, showing veins of light that pulsed beneath the surface. Their eyes were large and completely white, with no pupils that Ben could see. "Do not be afraid," the center being said, its lips not moving but its voice clear in Ben's mind. "We mean you no harm. We are the Kethmori, guardians of this sector of space." Ben's hand moved slowly toward the emergency alarm, but he stopped himself. These beings had somehow appeared on his ship without triggering any alarms. If they meant him harm, there was nothing he could do to stop them. "How did you get here?" Ben asked. "My ship's shields were active." "Physical barriers mean little to us," the being replied. "We exist partially outside your dimension. But that is not important now. What matters is that you have finally awakened." "Finally? How long have you been watching me?" "Since your ship entered our territory 300 years ago. We studied you while you slept, learned from the patterns in your mind. You are remarkable, even among your remarkable species." Ben felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. "You've been watching me sleep for 3 centuries?" "Watching, learning, hoping," the second being said, stepping forward. This one seemed smaller, more delicate than the first. "Your species possesses something we have never encountered before. Something we desperately need. What could humans possibly have that you need? You can walk through walls and read minds. Your technology is far beyond ours. The third being, who had remained silent, finally spoke. You dream, it said simply. Ben stared at them. Everyone dreams. No, the first being said. You misunderstand. All species rest, but only humans dream the way you do. While you sleep, your minds create entire worlds, complete stories with characters and conflicts and resolutions. You experience emotions about things that never existed. You solve problems that have no solutions. You imagine the impossible and make it feel real. Ben was quiet for a moment, trying to understand.
And that's special?
It is beyond special, the second being said. It is miraculous. Most species, when they rest, simply turn off their consciousness. Others replay memories or process information. But humans create. Even in sleep, you are builders of reality. The first being moved closer, its white eyes somehow conveying earnestness despite having no pupils. We have monitored your dreams for 3 centuries. In them, you have fought battles that could not be won and won them anyway. You have loved beings that did not exist and mourned their deaths. You have built cities from nothing and saved worlds through pure determination. Your sleeping mind has solved problems that our greatest scientists could not answer. This is why we chose you, the third being said. Our people face extinction, and our logical minds cannot find a solution. But your illogical, impossible human mind might be able to do what we cannot. Ben stood up slowly, his legs still unsteady. Extinction from what? The beings looked at each other, and Ben sensed communication passing between them that he could not hear. Finally, the first being spoke. Come with us to our city. Meet our queen. She will explain everything, and then you may choose whether to help us or return to your lonely journey through space. Ben looked around his ship, at the dust-covered surfaces and empty corridors. He thought about the endless years ahead, drifting through space with no destination and no purpose. Then he looked at these strange beings who spoke of dreams and impossible solutions. I'll come with you, he said. The beings moved to surround him, and Ben felt a strange, tingling sensation. The ship around him began to fade, becoming transparent like glass. He could see through the walls into space and beyond that to the massive crystal city that awaited them. They materialized inside a vast chamber that took Ben's breath away. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, supported by pillars of living light. The walls were covered in patterns that moved and shifted like flowing water. Other Kethmori moved through the space, some walking, others floating, all of them radiating that same gentle luminescence. This is the heart chamber, the first being explained, the center of our city ship. Our queen waits for you there. They walked through corridors that defied Ben's understanding of architecture. Walls curved in directions that should not have been possible. Stairs led both up and down at the same time. Gardens grew in midair, their plants reaching toward light sources that Ben could not see. Other Kethmori stopped to look at him as they passed. Some pointed, others whispered in voices he could not hear. Ben felt like a primitive being among gods, but the aliens treated him with respect rather than condescension. They came to a great hall where dozens of Kethmori had gathered. At the far end, on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single enormous crystal, sat a being that could only be their queen. Queen Nira was larger than the others, perhaps 10 feet tall, and her crystalline body contained more light than any Ben had seen. Her presence filled the room like a physical force. When she looked at him, Ben felt as though she could see not just his body but his soul. Ben of Earth, she said, her voice resonating through the chamber. Welcome to our realm. I am Nira, Queen of the Kethmori, last guardian of the inner worlds. Ben tried to bow, unsure of the proper protocol for meeting alien royalty. Your Majesty, I'm honored to meet you. The honor is ours, Queen Nira replied, rising from her throne. As she stood, her form seemed to shift and change, sometimes solid, sometimes appearing to be made of pure energy. For 3 centuries we have studied your sleeping mind, marveled at its creations, and hoped that you might be the answer to our desperate need. She gestured, and the air around them filled with images. Ben saw star systems consumed by darkness, worlds stripped bare of all life, entire civilizations reduced to empty husks. The Devourers come, Queen Nira said. They have consumed 17 star systems, leaving nothing but dead worlds in their wake. Each civilization they destroy makes them stronger, more intelligent, more adaptable. They learn from those they consume, adding their knowledge to their own. The images showed massive dark ships moving through space like a plague. Wherever they went, stars dimmed and planets cracked. We are the 18th in their path, Queen Nera continued. Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons cannot harm them. Our shields cannot protect us. They are perfect predators, evolved over millions of years to consume and adapt. Ben stared at the images, feeling small and helpless. What could I possibly do against something like that? Queen Nera moved closer, her luminous form towering over him. You can think the impossible. In your dreams, we have watched you solve problems that have no solutions. You have found hope where none existed. You have turned defeat into victory through pure stubbornness and refusal to accept failure. Those were just dreams, Ben protested. None of it was real. Reality is what we make it, Queen Nera said. Your species has a gift that ours lacks. We think in patterns of logic and mathematics. When we encounter a problem with no logical solution, we accept defeat. But humans do not. You create new solutions from nothing. You imagine your way around impossible obstacles. She gestured again, and the images changed to show Ben's own dreams from his long sleep. He saw himself leading impossible charges against overwhelming odds, building bridges across infinite voids, talking enemies into becoming friends through sheer force of personality. These dreams are not just fantasies, Queen Nera explained. They are expressions of your species' greatest strength, the ability to conceive of victory even when victory is impossible. This is what we need. This is what might save not just our people, but all the civilizations in the Devourer's path. Ben looked around the great hall at the assembled Kethmori. He saw hope in their alien faces, but also fear. These beings, with all their advanced technology and incredible abilities, were as helpless as children against this threat. What exactly are you asking me to do? Ben said. Help us think differently, Queen Nera replied. Work with our strategists and scientists. Show them how to approach problems the way humans do. Teach them to dream of impossible solutions. Ben was quiet for a long moment, overwhelmed by the responsibility being placed on him. The fate of entire civilizations might rest on his ability to think creatively. And if I refuse? He asked. Then we will return you to your ship with our gratitude for the time you have given us, Queen Nera said. You will continue your journey through space, and we will face our extinction with the knowledge that we tried everything we could. Ben thought about his empty ship, about the endless years of loneliness that awaited him. Then he thought about these beings who had watched over his sleep for 3 centuries, who saw something valuable in the very dreams that made him human. If I agree to help, Ben said, what happens to me afterward? Assuming we succeed? That will be your choice, Queen Nera replied. You may return to your ship or stay with us and help build whatever comes after. But first we must survive. Ben looked around the great hall one more time, at the faces of beings who had placed their hope in him. He thought about the impossible task ahead, about trying to defeat an enemy that had consumed 17 civilizations. Then he thought about all the dreams he had dreamed during his long sleep, all the impossible victories his sleeping mind had achieved. Maybe that was what they needed. Maybe the impossible was exactly what this situation required. I'll help you, Ben said. I don't know if I can do what you think I can do, but I'll try. Queen Nera's form brightened, literally glowing with relief and gratitude. Around the hall, the other Kethmori made sounds that Ben somehow understood as cheering. Then let us begin, Queen Nera said. Time grows short, and the Devourers come closer with each passing day. But now, for the first time in centuries, we have something we have never had before. What's that? Ben asked. Queen Nera smiled, an expression that somehow translated perfectly despite her alien features. Hope, she said. Ben spent his first week among the Kethmori, learning about their enemy. Queen Nera assigned him to work with their greatest military minds in the strategy chamber, a vast room filled with floating displays that showed star maps, battle simulations, and tactical analyses. The information was overwhelming. Commander Vex, the eldest of the Kethmori strategists, led Ben through the data. His crystalline form was darker than the others, scarred by centuries of warfare. The Devourers first appeared in the Outer Rim 3,000 years ago, Vex explained, manipulating the displays to show their path of destruction. They consume everything, not just life, but matter itself. They break down planets, stars, even space dust, and absorb it into their collective. Ben watched the simulations play out. Each battle showed the same pattern. Fleets of ships would engage the Devourers, fight bravely, and then simply disappear. How do they destroy entire fleets so quickly? They adapt, another strategist, Kira, answered. Her voice carried deep sadness. Every weapon we use against them, they learn to counter. Every strategy we employ, they anticipate the second time. They consumed the warrior race of Thalox and gained their combat knowledge. They absorbed the technological masters of Xerion and learned their sciences. With each civilization they destroy, they become more intelligent and more dangerous. Ben studied the tactical displays, trying to understand the scope of the threat. The Devourers moved through space like a dark tide, leaving empty systems behind them. Their ships were massive, organic-looking things that pulsed with stolen energy. What about evacuation? Ben asked. Can't people just run? Commander Vex's form dimmed with sorrow. The Devourers are faster than any ship we have built. They hunt down refugee fleets and consume them in deep space. There is nowhere to run that they cannot follow. For days, Ben worked with the Kethmori strategists, studying their plans and proposals. Every strategy was logical, well-reasoned, and completely hopeless. The Kethmori approached warfare like a mathematical equation, calculating optimal formations and weapon deployments. But mathematics could not defeat an enemy that adapted to every logical response. Ben found himself growing frustrated. The Kethmori were brilliant, but their brilliance was trapped in patterns of thought that the Devourers had already learned to counter. They needed something different, something the enemy could not predict or adapt to. On his 7th day in the strategy chamber, Ben finally spoke up during a planning session. We're thinking about this all wrong, he said. The assembled strategists turned to look at him. Commander Vex raised what might have been an eyebrow. Explain. Every plan you've shown me is about fighting the Devourers, Ben said. Better weapons, stronger shields, faster ships. But that's exactly what 17 other civilizations tried. The Devourers have already learned how to counter every possible military strategy. Then what do you suggest? Kira asked. We cannot simply surrender. Ben stood up and began pacing around the chamber, his mind racing. Back on Earth, there's an old saying, if you can't beat them, join them. But what if we turned that around? What if, instead of trying to beat them or join them, we made them join us? The strategists looked confused. Commander Vex's lights flickered. The Devourers cannot be reasoned with. They exist only to consume. Right, they consume, Ben said, getting excited as an idea formed. So what if we gave them something to consume that they couldn't digest? Something that would change them from the inside? What could possibly affect beings that have consumed 17 civilizations? Kira asked. Ben stopped pacing and looked directly at her. Dreams. The chamber fell silent. The Kethmori strategists exchanged glances, their forms flickering with confusion. Dreams are not physical, Commander Vex said slowly. How could we feed dreams to the Devourers? The same way you've been studying my dreams for 3 centuries, Ben replied. You told me that humans dream differently than other species. We create entire worlds in our sleep, complete with characters and stories and emotions. What if we could gather dreams from every species in the galaxy and create something the Devourers have never encountered before? Ben moved to the central display and began manipulating the controls, showing star maps of surviving civilizations. The Devourers consume knowledge and adapt to it. But dreams aren't knowledge in the traditional sense. Dreams are chaos and creativity and impossible logic all mixed together. They're contradictory and illogical and beautiful. You want to create a weapon from dreams? Kira asked, her voice uncertain. Not a weapon, Ben said, a gift. Something so complex and contradictory that the Devourers can't process it. Something that might show them there's more to existence than just consuming. Commander Vex was quiet for a long moment, his scarred form dimming as he considered the proposal. This is not strategy, he said finally. This is madness. Exactly, Ben grinned. And that's why it might work. Queen Nira arrived in the strategy chamber within the hour. Ben explained his idea again, while the assembled strategists listened with expressions of polite skepticism. When he finished, the Queen was silent for a long time. You propose to gather the dreams and stories of every surviving species in our sector, she said finally, and somehow combine them into a construct that the Devourers cannot consume. Yes, Ben said, but it has to be voluntary. The dreams and stories have to be given freely, with hope and love behind them. That's what will make them indigestible to beings that only know how to take and destroy. Even if such a thing were possible, Commander Vex interjected, how would we deliver it to the Devourers? Our ships cannot get close enough to their fleet. We don't deliver it, Ben said. We broadcast it. Send it out on every frequency in every dimension the Kethamori can reach. Make it so big and bright that the Devourers can't ignore it. Queen Nira's form brightened as she considered the proposal. The psychic networks of our people could carry such a construct. And our allies among the surviving civilizations have their own methods of telepathic communication. You're seriously considering this? Kira asked, her lights flickering with disbelief. Commander Vex is correct, Queen Nira said. This plan is madness. It defies all logic and military doctrine. But Ben is also correct. Logic has failed us. Perhaps madness is exactly what we need. The next few weeks were a frenzy of activity unlike anything the Kethamori had ever undertaken. Instead of building weapons and fortifying defenses, they became collectors of stories and dreams. Queen Nira sent messages to every surviving civilization in their sector, explaining the desperate plan and asking for their participation. The response was overwhelming. Species that had never cooperated before began sharing their most precious cultural treasures. The warlike Thalic survivors sent epic tales of impossible battles won through courage alone. The artistic Melodians contributed songs that could move listeners to tears for beings they had never met. The philosophical Zenari offered meditation visions of perfect worlds that existed only in contemplation. Ben worked day and night with teams of Kethamori technicians, learning to weave these contributions together into something coherent yet chaotic. The construct they were building defied description. It contained love stories between species that could never meet, war chronicles of battles that had never been fought, creation myths for worlds that existed only in imagination. It's becoming something alive, reported Kira, who had become one of the project's most enthusiastic supporters. The stories are beginning to interact with each other, creating new narratives that none of us intended. Ben nodded, watching the displays that showed their creation growing more complex by the hour. That's perfect. The Devourers have never encountered anything that creates itself. Everything they've consumed before was finite, complete. This thing will keep growing and changing as long as there are minds to feed it new dreams. As they worked, reports came in from the outer systems. The Devourers had finished consuming the Xerian homeworlds and were moving toward Kethamori space. Their scouts reported massive ships that blotted out stars, and energy readings that suggested the enemy fleet had grown even larger than before. They will be here in 10 days, Commander Vex announced during one of their briefings. Our construct is impressive, but is it ready? Ben looked at the swirling mass of stories and dreams they had assembled. It filled an entire dimension now, visible to psychic senses as a writhing tapestry of impossible colors and sounds. It's as ready as it will ever be. The question is whether we are. Queen Nira made the final decision. We broadcast on my command, she announced to the assembled fleet. Every ship, every station, every psychic mind in our alliance will focus on projecting our construct toward the Devourer fleet. This is our one chance. The Devourers arrived exactly when predicted, their dark ships emerging from hyperspace like a nightmare made real. Ben watched from the bridge of the Kethamori flagship as sensors showed the enemy approaching. There were hundreds of vessels, each one larger than the biggest Kethamori city ship. They're scanning us, reported the sensor operator. Energy patterns suggest they're analyzing our defenses and fleet composition. Let them scan, Queen Nira said calmly. They will find nothing they have not seen before. Ben felt his heart racing as the Devourer fleet moved closer. This was it. Either his impossible plan would work, or the last free civilizations in this sector would join the 17 that had already fallen. Begin broadcast, Queen Nira commanded. Every ship in the Allied fleet activated their transmitters simultaneously. The construct burst from their collective minds like a psychic explosion, racing toward the Devourer fleet at the speed of thought. Ben watched the sensor displays, hardly daring to breathe. The construct hit the leading Devourer ships and something unprecedented happened. The enemy vessels stopped. For the first time in recorded history, the Devourers halted their advance without being forced to do so. What are they doing? Commander Vex asked, studying his instruments with confusion. They're trying to consume it, Ben said, watching as the Devourer ships pulsed with strange energies. But they can't. It's too big, too complex, too contradictory. The construct continued to flow into the enemy fleet, and Ben could see its effects spreading from ship to ship. Some vessels began to glow with new colors. Others started moving in patterns that seemed almost like dancing rather than military formations. Look at the energy readings, Kira said, her voice filled with wonder. They're changing. The Devourers are actually changing. Ben watched in amazement as the transformation spread through the enemy fleet. Ships that had been dark and threatening began to emit warm light. Vessels that had moved with predatory efficiency now flowed through space like living art. What have we done? Queen Nera whispered. We gave them something they've never had before, Ben replied. Choice, the ability to imagine something other than consumption and destruction. The transformation was not complete. Some Devourer ships resisted the change, continuing to pulse with dark energy, but others embraced it fully, their forms shifting and evolving into something beautiful rather than terrifying. Then something even more amazing happened. The transformed Devourers began to sing. The sound came through every frequency, a harmony that spoke of joy and discovery and the wonder of creation. Other Devourer ships, hearing this song, began to change as well. The transformation spread like wildfire through their fleet. The resistant ones are retreating, Commander Vex reported. About a third of their fleet is jumping away. Let them go, Queen Nera said. We have saved who we could. In the days that followed, Ben worked with Queen Nera and the transformed Devourers to establish communication. The beings that emerged from their ships were nothing like the destructive force that had terrorized the galaxy. They had retained their intelligence and their technology, but gained something new, the ability to create rather than merely consume. We remember now, said the being who had once commanded the Devourer fleet. Its form was shifting and beautiful, like living crystal infused with starlight. Before the hunger took us, we were builders. The dreams you shared with us awakened memories we thought were lost forever. What will you do now? Ben asked. We will rebuild what we destroyed, the being replied. We will return life to the worlds we consumed, restore the civilizations we ended. It will take millennia, but we have millennia to give. Ben found himself standing on the observation deck of the Kethmori flagship, watching as former Devourer ships worked alongside Kethmori vessels to begin the great work of restoration. Queen Nera joined him, her luminous presence warm beside him. You have given us more than survival, she said. You have given us a future we never dared to imagine. We did it together, Ben replied. Your people, the allied civilizations, even the Devourers themselves. All I did was suggest that maybe there was another way to think about the problem. Queen Nera turned to face him, her form shifting between solid matter and pure energy. What will you do now, Ben of Earth? Your lonely ship waits for you if you choose to return to it. Ben considered the question. He could go back to the horizon, continue his original mission, spend his remaining years exploring the galaxy alone. Or he could stay here, help guide this new alliance between former enemies and be part of building something unprecedented. I think, Ben said slowly, that I've been alone long enough. If you'll have me, I'd like to stay and help with whatever comes next. Queen Nera's form brightened with what Ben had learned to recognize as joy. Then stay you shall. As my equal, my partner in guiding this new age we have created together. Ben looked out at the transformed fleet, at beings who had been the galaxy's greatest threat now working to heal the wounds they had inflicted. He thought about the power of dreams and stories, about the impossible becoming possible when people dared to imagine a better way. You know what the best part is? Ben said. What? Queen Nera asked. This is just the beginning. We've shown that enemies can become allies, that destruction can become creation. Imagine what we might accomplish when we really get started. Queen Nera laughed, a sound like crystal bells ringing in harmony. Around them, the work continued, former Devourers and their former prey laboring side by side to build a future that none of them could have imagined alone. Ben smiled, thinking about the dreams that had brought him to this moment. Sometimes the most powerful victories came not from destroying enemies, but from helping them remember who they used to be and who they might become again.